Rightio. Good morning, everyone. I can see everyone's jumping in now. I know we're a minute or two late today, but we'll just give it another couple of minutes for everybody to join in and get themselves into the webinar, test their audio, all that sort of stuff. And just while we're waiting for a minute or two at the start as well, just so you know, we'll be keeping track of the Q&A and chat section today as well. So if anyone's got any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to ask questions. And of course, we'll have time at the end as well. And I know every webinar, we sort of get a couple of follow-up emails as well on the content. So yeah, definitely at the end, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly as well via email.
Sorry, everyone, just getting ready. Just wait one more minute. Okay. Sweet. Can you see that all right? Cool. Can you see that all good, Brad?
Yep, all working perfectly.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll start now. So, welcome everyone to our fifth Cyber Safe Kiwis webinar. So, it's been quite a long way. We've come all the way to 5. For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome, and welcome back to everyone who's been here from the start. So today we'll be covering the topic of securing your home ecosystem. I'll be your host, so I'll just introduce myself a little bit for those who might not be familiar with me. I'm Maddie, and I've worked with ESET for 2 years now. I started here by doing support for home users, so some of you may recognize me even if you've given us a call before. I'm now the consumer business executive specializing in ESET here, and today I've got Brad with me. If you want to give yourself a bit of an introduction, Brad.
Cool. Morning, everyone. I've been selling ESET in New Zealand since about 2006 or so know the product very well. And I've been employed by Chilisoft now for nearly 3 years. I head up to the business and MSP side of things, but yeah, always take a keen interest in everything. Of course, that's why I'm in these webinars as well. And sometimes it's just handy to have two people in just to keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A and that sort of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, of course, I'll explain a little bit about what is Cyber Kiwis. So it is an initiative that we've launched that's rooted in educating people who are looking to get their smarts up a little bit about technology. It's open to everyone. So whether you're an ESET customer or a user, or you're just interested generally in these presentations, they're all for helping Kiwis be smarter and safer online through 3 key qualities that we promote. So that's to inform, educate, and therefore protect. So you can always invite friends or family along, or you're able to share the recordings after the fact. And we welcome anyone with any literacy level in technology. So if you happen to miss our last one, that's no problem. We record all of the sessions so that you can watch it later. And last time we spoke a little bit about the role of AI and automation in cybersecurity. It was a bit more of a discussion and a bit of a breakdown on what the different levels of AI is and how they work. And in today's episode, we'll be discussing, securing your home ecosystem, what that is, the threats that revolve around it, and how we can best secure it. And just in case anyone who is joining us who's not familiar with ESET specifically and is wondering, what qualifies us to give these kinds of presentations in cybersecurity or cyber safety, ESET is a cybersecurity solution provider, and we've been distributed in New Zealand for over 20 years. We have partners all the way from the tip of the North Island to down south in Invercargill, but we're headquartered here in Auckland. We provide reliable and secure cybersecurity nationwide for all in any kind of environment. And to complement that, we pride ourselves on having local Kiwi support that's just a phone call or an email away for most of our clients. So let's start by discussing what exactly is your home ecosystem. It actually starts off with you, and you are the home admin and the one who manages and sets up your system. The heart of your system is, of course, your router. because your router provides the ability for you to connect to your internet via the devices that make up your ecosystem. Now, when I speak about the devices, a lot of people think of their ecosystem as just their Wi-Fi, their phone, and their computer. And that's probably because these are the main devices that they spend most of their time on or connect to the internet on. But what tends to sort of slip a lot of people's minds is that there's often way more devices connected to your ecosystem that you might just not really think about. For example, if you have a smart TV, that also connects into your network and becomes part of that ecosystem. And this also creates another point of access into the network. If you live in a larger house or perhaps rurally, you might also have a Wi-Fi extender in order to get better signal in rooms or places further away from the router. For some people, they might even have a Wi-Fi controlled air conditioning unit, so they can set the temperature remotely and, schedule times for when it turns off and on. And now this might be a little bit more niche, but some people even have smart fridges where they have a screen on the front of the fridge and they can browse the internet for recipes or watch videos if you're into that sort of thing at least. But as you can see, as you start to include the many devices that the router connect to in the home, you begin to sort of get a better picture of your actual ecosystem. Now, many devices these days almost make it a necessity to connect online in order to provide, creature comforts or just convenience to you as the user. And it can be a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, how we can best secure all of these different devices or aspects of your ecosystem when they're so varied and different. For example, there's, unlikely to be an antivirus app for your air conditioner. So how do you make sure that all of these connection points are actually secure? And before we get into that, we have to mention that there's one part of the ecosystem that's even more important to protect than your router or your devices, and that's actually you. So after all, you are the key to setting up the security and the devices that connect into your ecosystem. So it's really important to actually start there. So, of course, attending the webinars like the one today is one of the best ways to stay educated. So a bit of a shameless self shout out here. If it is your first time attending today and you're a bit confused on what certain terms mean or not sure where to place yourself in terms of knowledge in the cyberspace, you can always go back and check out these previous webinars. And I think the ones that are most relevant to today's topic is episode 1 and 2. So just quickly, episode 1 will tell you about, the threats New Zealand is most prone to, how they work, how to classify them. And then episode 2 will let you know where on the cyber smart spectrum you sit. So if you are too relaxed about your security, maybe a little bit too paranoid, or if you're just right. So let's get back into, the topic of today, which is a little bit if we can get into the technicals of it, I suppose. So, of course, your router will start there is the key to your network. So it routes traffic, like when you enter a website address from your phone to that specific site. It also assigns addresses to your device. So you might have heard the term, IP address or maybe MAC address. And the most simple way to describe them is to think of them a little bit like a car. So every car has a VIN number, which is, a unique identification, and so does all of your devices. This stays the same. So the MAC address is sort of like the car's VIN number, and this stays the same no matter what network you connect to. And an IP address is a little bit like your license plate. So now that's on a device or network level. This tells you the location. So like your license plate, the license plate in Europe look a lot different to the license plates here in New Zealand. The IP join a new network, it can change, or it can even change if you're on the same network after a couple of days. Unless you've made it so that it stays the same, similar to creating a custom license plate. And finally, like I mentioned, it is the host of your connection and sort of the heart of the ecosystem. And the most simple way I can think of describing it is like how way back in the day when you called someone, you would actually connect to a call center first. So this would be a router in this instance. And then you would tell the operator, which you want to connect to. And the router is the operator in this example here, or this metaphor. Controls almost all of your ecosystem traffic. It is also pretty vital to secure it. Now, right after a strong and secure password, hopefully no one has a Wi-Fi password that is just password 123 because it's easy to remember. One of the more common ways to secure a network is actually through a firewall. The name is sort of a little bit self-explanatory, but essentially you can control what in and goes out with a firewall. So just like how in real life, a firewall is designed to stop a fire from reaching a room, the same goes for stopping unsolicited traffic from reaching your network. Now, firewalls aren't always at the front of your network, though. In fact, a lot of devices actually have firewalls locally installed on them. So this means that if a bad actor manages to breach into your network, they still won't be able to access the firewall device if it's configured to block traffic that doesn't seem legitimate or it's from an unknown source. However, if a bad actor manages to breach the network in the first place and they're unable to access, the device with the firewall on it, they can still manage to access devices that are not protected with a firewall. So why this is important is because a lot of people think, oh, I mainly use the computer, so I only really put protection on that, while leaving the phone or other devices in the home out of the security plan. And this is where bad actors can take advantage of that. They can also reverse it. So if a bad actor manages to access the unsecured device first, and that's still connected to the network, they can then access the network through that instead of going through the router first or the network first. So how do they gain access into the ecosystem of well, it's not like movies, they definitely open up an application, I'm going to target the mainframe or, attack this person through their network right away. Normally, they actually cannot access through that first compromise. So some vulnerabilities, which I'm going to call as common forms of compromise, this is how, they sort of target these specific things. First one would be out-of-date systems. Now, big one recently is, Windows 11 launch, and that was really big. A lot of devices were, up to date on Windows 10 and might not be able to upgrade to Windows 11. This is pretty important because when Windows 11 released, they said that they were going to stop security updates for Windows 10, and bad actors love that because that means now that whatever security is on a Windows 10 machine, it's not going to get any better than that. And if they find exploits, they're going to target it. Second one, of course, this is familiar with this, weak or repeated credentials, that's passwords or anything like that. A lot of people will have but then use for everything, really bad, because if one of them is compromised and you have the habit of doing that, that means that the bad actor can easily guess or, just change a couple of things and be able to get into more things. The other one is unsecured downloads or sites. And so a lot of the time, if you go onto a reputable site, sometimes they can become compromised even though they weren't before. So this is a bit tricky to navigate, from your standpoint, because if you're secure but the site's not secure, then that responsibility isn't really within your control always. So just as I've just labeled here, not all of them are within your control. Sometimes it can be a bit of a gamble. So if you download things from a site that has historically been secure, but suddenly it's now been compromised, and similar to like a Facebook data breach or something, this is where a lot of people forget that it's not your security to be concerned about, but the security about the things that you access or do online. They can fall victim to these sorts of attacks as well. So making sure that you are keeping good habits and staying as secure as possible can work in your favor for it to not affect you as severely. And there's other forms as well, like the most common of which is phishing attacks. That's what most people are familiar with. Getting sent an email with an attachment that's actually not legitimate, or it's a virus or something like that. Social engineering, where they just kind of try to convince and lie to you that something is happening, or in order for you to pay money or get access to the system, and even app downloads. So a really common one is where people download games on their phone, and that's completely fine for a year or so. And then later on, they notice they're getting constant pop-up ads on their phone, or things don't seem quite right, when it's actually like a pokey game or something that has now been turned into a malicious app, which is known as, adware or anything similar. So I like to call this sort of the snowballing. It's just a better way to visualize it with this example here. So it's how they compromise one aspect and then get into other systems down the line. So let's say, for example, you have a security system at home that is a Wi-Fi security camera. Unfortunately, you forgot to set a password to this camera, and a bad actor manages to access these cameras, because they connect to the Wi-Fi and are Wi-Fi controlled through the router. And you also use your phone to check in on the app, to see if someone's at the door or anything. This is how, it's sort of linear, how they can get access to one thing and then slowly get access to more things if they're not secured. And that's why I call it the snowballing, because it's just one aspect. If just one aspect is compromised, it can snowball into the aspect. And the reason, bad actors do this is often for a form of payment, or to exploit the user for the data that has been accessed. So there's unfortunately a few ways that they profit off these kinds of compromises. So for one, they might sell the information online. So that's either on the dark or deep web, or use it to personally access more valuable data. So that's bank accounts, credit card information, that sort of thing. They can also use these accounts or systems, even sometimes the whole ecosystem, to spread more malware to other victims. So, for example, say I'm sure actually most people have had this happen to them at least once, where, a friend's account is compromised and the friend is sending very strange things or links or something. Then that's how they also do this, so that friends, they reach other victims through this account, because your friends are more likely to trust you and therefore open or click on things that you send. They can even threaten you with the data that they have access to. So normally it's either to draw out more information from you, or demand a ransom to not do something malicious with the data that they've got. Usually with cryptocurrency, which is not as traceable as like direct bank transfer or anything like that. It's important to note here, though, that sometimes these demands are not always because they actually do have access to your systems, but can be a form of social engineering, where they just hope that you believe them enough in order to and then pay the bad actor for that. So how do we even begin to defend against this? Well, first of all, it's unrealistic to expect everyone to know exactly every risk associated with, every device in their ecosystem, and to secure it manually or separately. So the most popular or convenient choice, rather, is to have an all-in-one protection product that has many layers to that. So security is best thought of as, your digital insurance. Multi-layered is the best way to go, because if one aspect is compromised, then there are still many more layers to defend you just in case. And generally, bad actors give up if they consistently run into roadblocks, because there's probably an easier target to exploit than you, who has all of this multi-layered security. Believe that attacks are visible and that they're obvious. such as the general scam text or, the phishing email. But there is so much communication happening in the background between you and all of your devices that can actually be intercepted without you even knowing. So it's not always about outsmarting them or, being savvy and clever. A lot of the time it's about being smart about your security against them. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like the firewall example I mentioned earlier, you can always layer these for both your network and your devices locally to make it harder for a bad actor to break through. One of the best ways, however, is, multi-layering, so using different forms of protection. So in this example, we've got a firewall and a VPN. This way, if a bad actor manages to breach the firewall, the VPN actually camouflages your traffic by making it look like it's coming from somewhere else other than your network, and keeping your real location and your real data secure. So VPNs can be a little bit hard for people to understand, and a lot of people are only familiar with it in terms of, accessing Netflix overseas to get the categories over there to watch movies or something like that. But they might not realize that it's actually a really effective security measure, when it's diagrammed, but it's basically how it works. Essentially, when you send data, and for example, let's say you send Hello World out into the internet, the VPN takes that and then encrypts it. So basically by encrypting it, it cannot be decoded or intercepted. So before your hello world message reaches the internet, the VPN scrambles it. And that's what's commonly known as encryption. So like I said, much more difficult to decode or intercept, or even know where that's coming from if someone's trying to read the information while it's being sent online. So another example of how it can protect you. So let's say it can mask the location of where your location actually is. So remember our car metaphor before, talking about your VIN number and your license plate. This example is pretty similar. So let's say you send data from New Zealand, kia ora, but you're connected to a Spanish VPN server. Then the things that you do online now look like it's all coming from Spain, which makes it much more difficult for your online activity to be traced back to you. So that's also another layer of keeping your network and therefore your ecosystem very secure. There's also many more layers of this, of course, but when you have multi-layered security and you make sure to utilize the features, you can be far more confident in the security of your ecosystem. So you always have to make sure that your security products, devices, and you, of course, are up to date. And this makes it much more troublesome for bad actors to try and gain access or compromise your systems. So, for example, if you are an ESET customer, let's say that a bad actor tries to breach through into your computer. Let's say they've gotten through the local firewall on the device and they're trying to install, a virus onto the computer. The first thing that would pick that up is the antivirus with an ESET. Now, again, that's how it's multi-layered. So then let's say the virus is on the computer and it starts doing something malicious. After being dormant for a while, as soon as it starts to act on it, then it would be intercepted. And the other thing that's good about, having the security product is that it actually tells you when something's been done. So if it intercepts a virus or something like that, it'll actually give you a notification and let you know that's been done. A lot of people who don't have security products just think, I've never gotten anything, like nothing has ever shown up on my computer. I don't think I've ever been hacked or compromised, but they might not know that because they've never actually seen how something has been prevented or stopped from happening to them. And if you're not actually sure, we're always here to help as well. So whether you're an ESET customer or not, if you're not sure what level of protection you have, whether it's right or whether it's enough for you, or even if you have general questions about your cybersecurity, you can always reach out to us, and that's through emailing support@chilisoft.net, and we'll be happy to answer your questions or, give guidance. So I want to take this part of the webinar, the last couple of minutes or so, actually just to answer questions from people. So if you have something that, you've got a ecosystem at home and you're not sure whether it's secure, or you don't know how something works, I actually want you to ask those questions now, because a lot of people might have the same question but just might not be confident enough to ask it or anything like that, and we can discuss it together, and that way we can all learn from that. So if you've got one at the moment, please pop it in the chat, and Brad, if you don't mind reading them out to me so that I can also engage with that.
Cool. No, keeping an eye on it. We had a couple of people right at the start message through to us that we know very well, Pat. I can see you've made a couple of comments there, but no, yeah, no actual questions at the stage.
Just give it a minute or so for anyone if they wanted to ask a question. Maybe a bit shy today. That's okay. Like I said, if you do think of something though, you can always reach out to us and we will help you with that. It's a little bit of a shorter one today, but that's because it's important for you to recognize that if you do have this multi-layered security product, maybe go in and check your ESET product. Have you enabled all of the features? Are you using that to its full capability? That sort of thing is really important as well. So Kathy has got a good question here. Thank you for asking question, Kathy. So we have router and ESET on it. How can we check the security of that, or whether you want to check if ESET's fully enable all the features on your PC? And Brad, Nigel's got a good
Yep.
comment.
I know Nigel well. I recognize that name immediately there. And yeah, what Nigel's talking about is separate your IoT, meaning Internet of Things, devices to a different network. And the reason why Nigel's talking about that is that something like, say, your CCTV, the Skybox that Kathy's talking about, if you've got aircon units or whatever that connect to the internet, then the issue that you've got there is that if you can connect into them to turn your aircon on remotely, or if you can connect into them to watch your CCTV remotely, then potentially somebody else can as well. And there's a couple of things there. One is around the password that you use to connect into it. Second, some of them have got sort of secure apps that only allow a connection from that app into the device, which is definitely what I'd recommend there. And I've also seen some issues with some of the CCTV brands having sort of bugs in them where people can theoretically connect into them as well. So yeah, just if you are setting up that sort of stuff on the network that people can access remotely, you definitely want to make sure that it's secured there. Now, that's something that I personally have experience in, but that's not necessarily something that we do here at Chilisoft. So if you do have concerns around that sort of thing, then yeah, reach out to us. We can get you in touch with one of our resellers across the country that can help you.
I've got a really good question here from Susan, and I think this is actually very important. So Susan says, if we get an update on the printer that says it wishes to change the system, do we allow this? Now, this is actually, I've seen a lot of people, even when we help them install ESET or something, there's a very scary looking message that says, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Now, if you know for a fact, you can
Automatically,
normally
sometimes
see.
you turn them on, it'll just pop up and say, I need to do an update. You should definitely do those.
Yes.
Half of the time, it'll be security related updates.
Yes. So, but also it's important that you actually know where that's coming from. So, for example, if you're just browsing the internet and suddenly something comes up that says, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Actually read what that's coming from. And if you're not sure, you need to Google what that is, even if you don't recognize it, before you just hit yes. And this also applies on your phone. So, if you install an app from the App Store, or Google Play, and it's a gaming app, sometimes you should, well, actually not sometimes, all the time, please skim through actually what you are allowing the app to do, because a lot of people just hit yes, they want to play the game right now, and they don't realize that they've actually given potentially an app higher privileges security app on the phone. And this is why something like adware can get really difficult to remove, because it's been given basically admin rights on the phone. And that's very, very difficult to get rid of. You basically have to clear the phone in order to do that if you don't know which app is causing. Same as on the PC. If you see that message and you're the one initiating it, we're installing an app and we know we're installing and it's asking us to allow changes, then of course hit yes. But if you're not sure what is sending that message, before you actually hit yes, maybe just double check and make sure that it's coming from something that is legitimate. For example, if it's the printer, needs an update, of course hit yes so that it can do that. So that was a really good question. Thank you for that.
Cool. And then we've got one last question. So most people, by the way, are popping it into the webinar chat, but we do have one that's come through from the Q&A section. That's an update on the printer wishes to change the system. So yeah, printers, much like some of those other examples I mentioned, they will get updates every so often. Now there's two parts to that, I think, with printers. One, there's the update for the printer itself, and I would normally think the printer would actually want to suggest that on its screen, but some of them also might suggest it on the software as well that you're running on your PC. And then, of course, there's that software on the PC as well and keeping it up to date. So the simple answer there for both of those is, as Maddie was just saying, if you're verified that it is actually from HP or Brother or whoever the printer is, and it's coming from that application, then yeah, updating it will keep that device secure for you, absolutely. If it's a random thing on a random website saying that you need to update your printer or your driver, that's always a common thing, then the simple answer is no, that's not going to be a real one, and you definitely don't want to click on that.
Yeah, so Kathy just asked, how can we check that it's on the Sky router? So Kathy, I'll clarify for you. So if you have ESET on the computer, ESET is just on the computer. So some people think that because they've got ESET on one device, that covers like everything in the household. To be clear, ESET's an endpoint protection. And what endpoint means is that it's the end point, which is your computer is the endpoint that it's protecting. So if you have a router security is a little bit different. Brad can probably explain that a little bit better than I can. But if you have ESET on the computer, that means that the computer is secure. But like I showed in the presentation earlier, a lot of people think, I've got one computer that's secure. So that's what I mainly do everything on, but I've also got a phone that connects to the network. So it's important to secure both, because if a bad actor gets access through the network, they can avoid, the secured device, but they can go through the device that's not secured. Or if they access the unsecured device, they can still go through the network. So that's sort of the clarification on there. But in terms of the router, if you're talking about security on the router, Brad could probably explain that a little bit better as well.
Yeah, I think I must say I don't use Sky, so I'm not sure exactly. With Sky Router, I sort of interpret that as the box that actually connects to your TV and gives you the channels, rather than an actual networking router that connects from your internet to everything else. But the answer there again is pretty much the same, really. Is yeah, keep it up to date. That's the simple answer.
Sweet, those were some good questions. Anyone else has another question that good as well? Cool. So if you can't think of anything on the spot, I know it's really hard to do that. Today's webinar was really good, just, as an overview of the risks that are associated with, keeping things that it was a good explanation of how your ecosystem looks like, and also, keeping things secure and making sure that you cover those holes that might be there. So devices that you do use that connect to the network, but you don't have security for them. And if you don't have security for those devices, for example, like if it's a air conditioning unit that connects to the Wi-Fi, it's important to secure the Wi-Fi itself. So the next topic that it kind of links into this is response and recovery for cyber threats. So today we're sort of outlining them. And then the next topic we'll be looking at, how do you respond if you fall victim to certain types of attacks? What is the best steps to take? And, how can you make sure that you remediate this in the best way possible and make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future? All right, another question from Kathy as well: is AVG antivirus the same as ESET? No. So AVG definitely is not the same as ESET. Most competitor products, have different level tiers, just like ESET does. antivirus, but all products have different, what's it called, Brad, here? The level of
Tiers.
protection. Yeah. The
Yep.
level of protection is different. So I don't know if you still have that diagram. We can show this probably in the next webinar as well, where it actually compares the response rate of ESET's antivirus between competitors. So that includes AVG or like McAfee and that sort of thing. A lot of the time, things that are intercepted by something that like ESET's antivirus is not intercepted by AVG's antivirus. So they are different qualities of antivirus as well.
Yeah, I think typically just to add on to that, I'd say that yeah, AVG is sort of considered real sort of at the low end of the tier, if you like. It's often free, and definitely the free one doesn't work as good as a paid one, of course. But even the paid one, I think in most tests it typically doesn't do terribly well as far as detecting all viruses and protecting you against them. But also things like using more resource on your system and that sort of thing. So I just quickly now I did open this one up, and I must say it is sort of at the partner and internal level, so I can't quickly share the screen to you. And obviously, this is sort of a question on the fly, if you like. But a quick one that I found here is for one particular test, ESET detected 14 out of 15 of a particular type of attack. AVG was 10, which was actually ESET was the highest in that test out of about 10 different people. AVG was one of the lowest. For false alarms, again, depending on the various tests, typically you get sort of 0 or 1, whereas AVG sort of getting 2, 5, 7, that sort of thing. And then for impact on the speed of the PC, similar, ESET normally is about 2 to 3%, which again, definitely is a market leader. And then AVG tends to be more like 6 or 7, 8%. So yeah, a couple of different things there. But I think on the whole, yeah, AVG is sort of a free low-end product that yeah, I don't necessarily think is anywhere near sort of the top tier products such as ESET.
Yeah, I want to also show where was it? Right. So because ESET also is different in the way that it's called an all-in-one security package. Now, this is the highest tier, which has all of these features. So you can see that because it's all in one, that makes it a lot easier to manage and set up compared to competitive products, which might have three or two of these features, and then you have to go to another product to get the others. Whereas this is, all of it. So you get the VPN, the browser and privacy security, identity protection, network inspector. All of these things are all inclusive. Where because it is a paid product, and that makes it a premium product to give you more advanced protection compared to something like AVG that's free. That's it's marginal in terms of improvement over just having the stock standard antivirus on your computer that it comes with.
And I think that might be about the end of our session. So yes, we'll see you all next time. You'll see there's that QR code there that Maddie's just brought up. I was just about to say we'll have all the details for next one on our website.
Yeah.
You can also
So
watch
so
the
of
previous
course,
recordings as well.
we'll have the recording up for anyone who wants to share that or who wants to take a look back at this. And like I mentioned, the next topic is response and recovery. So this is a really good one to sit in on if you're still a little bit lost in terms of how you can best secure yourself. But if you ever fall victim to something, what steps to take and how to remediate that in the best way possible. So of course, thank you everyone for joining and taking time out of your day in order to be here and attend these webinars. And I do hope you all have a wonderful rest of your
Oh,
Tuesday.
and just one very last question that we've had there, Maddie,
Sure.
from Susan is advised date of the next seminar. We're doing one that's about 2 weeks' time, or are we doing January next?
Let me just double check that for you. I do believe it is in December.
And by the way, we'll send an email out to everyone that's registered for this,
Yes, of
attended, and of
course.
course to all the previous ones as well with details of the
Right,
future
so our
ones.
last one is actually this one. So the response and recovery for cyber threats. So they'll be on the 10th of December if you can make it, but if you can't, of course, it'll be recorded. But yeah, if you can attend, that'd be really good because it would be our final one, and it would be great to see everyone who's come all this way just there for the last one as well. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the questions.